Hello and welcome to the Business Standard Morning Show. I'm Binu Sandhu. It's the 24th of November 2023 and here are the questions we will be answering today. Are local job quotas the right way to go? What are Shyam Saran's views on Gaza, China and South Asia? Is it time to exit exchange-related stocks? And who is Gurpatwant Singh Pannun? It is a sticky subject that pits industry against politicians. While industry leaders prefer merit, politicians want to ensure what they call social justice. Last Friday, Congress released its manifesto in poll-bound Telangana and promised 75% quota for locals in private jobs. But just hours later, a High Court nixed a similar law which was invoked by the BJP in Haryana. So are local job quotas the right way to go about things? Abhijit Kumar speaks to experts to find out.
The Punjab and Haryana High Court has struck down a law passed by the Haryana government that gave 75% reservation in private jobs to residents of the state, provided their salaries were less than 30,000 rupees a month. Earlier, the state had set the threshold at 50,000 rupees, but it was brought down to 30,000 rupees after opposition from the industry. While quashing the law, the High Court said that it was discriminatory against individuals who were not from Haryana. The division bench of the court observed that the concept of constitutional morality was openly violated by introducing a secondary status to a set of citizens not belonging to Haryana. The court also pointed out that the right to provide 75% of reservation in private jobs was only regarding low-paid jobs. The state government is now planning to move the Supreme Court, which had earlier directed the High Court to dispose of the matter. And it's not just Haryana. Domicile-based reservation has been tried in a few other states also, both in government and private jobs. In 1995, the Gujarat government had passed a resolution ordering all the commercial entities, including central PSUs, functioning in Gujarat to hire 85% of their workforce from the state. But in September this year, a state minister told the assembly that several central government entities, like the Airports Authority of India, were not following the rule despite reminders. Andhra Pradesh and Jharkhand have also enacted similar legislation for private sector jobs. The law was challenged in Andhra and its High Court observed that the state's bill, passed in 2019, may be unconstitutional. But it is yet to hear the case on merits. Since 2020, Bihar has had a policy mandating the state domicile for employment of teachers in state-run schools. However, in June this year, the government scrapped this policy and allowed candidates from other states to appear for the examinations. Experts say that while the intent behind such measures is to prioritize local interests, domicile-based reservations often run into legal hurdles.
The legal challenges, of course, are that whenever a state comes up with some incentive like that, we are providing quota for private jobs, the first hurdle which they have to face is that it has to be within the ambit and four corners of the Constitution, which is that it should be under the right of equality, under the right of equal opportunity to every citizen of the country and not just to the people, citizens, natives of that particular region. So in government sector, the situation is different because Supreme Court and the Constitution allows, but that also is not that it's 100% quota or a reservation given. It is also coming with a cap.
One of the primary arguments in favor of job reservations for locals has been the potential fillip to the local economy. Proponents of this argument say that by ensuring a certain percentage of jobs for local residents, there is a greater likelihood that income generated will be reinvested locally, fostering economic growth of the state. However, industry experts argue that job reservations can lead to discrimination based on place of origin, potentially stifling meritocracy. They say that hiring decisions should be based on qualifications and skills rather than geographical considerations to ensure a fair and competitive job market.
For an employee, obviously, it's not the skills, meritocracy, or the capability matters, or that gets compromised, obviously. So, it's not very great, to do something like a quota system from that angle. And from the employer side, it's the same thing that they have to compromise on the quality of the hire. I think the primary criteria has to be the skills and the capability. And I think there's a lot of trust which the government is making on the skills and capability aspect, right? And I don't think so that anywhere that should take a backseat or be compromised upon, because it really has a direct impact on the employability, on the productivity, and on the business outcome as well.
So, if no quotas, how can regional disparities be addressed in non-farm employment?
At the moment when the situation is very bad, political demand will be for reservation, for job quotas, and governments will actually do that. But that's not the solution. The solution will be long-term. You have to shift focus on investment. For that, you have to raise resources, tax resources. And the only way to raise tax resources without creating inflation is to go for direct taxes. So wealth taxation, income taxation, corporate taxation, checking the black economy, because of which income tax to GDP ratio, direct tax to GDP ratio is only 6%. It has to be raised to at least 12, 14%, from the present 6%, and that can be done through wealth taxation, gift taxation, changes in income tax and corporate tax, checking the black economy. Then you'll have enough resources for employment generation all over the country.
While the debate over local job quotas continues, finding a middle ground that supports local employment without compromising merit and diversity is crucial. Experts believe that striking a balance between promoting local economic development and ensuring a fair, merit-based hiring process is a challenge that policymakers, businesses, and communities must carefully navigate.
Let us now move on to another sticky subject, the ongoing clash between Israel and Hamas. It has cast a shadow over the ambitious India-Middle East-Europe economic corridor. Business Standard's Bhaswar Kumar caught up with former Foreign Secretary Shyam Saran for his take on the issue. Saran also spoke at length about other issues which have a bearing on India, like the recent talks between US Presidents Joe Biden and Chinese leader Xi Jinping. Let's listen in.
We have with us Shyam Saran, former Foreign Secretary of India, to help us understand what these events mean for New Delhi. Welcome, Mr. Saran. Welcome to the Business Standard Morning Show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Months have been a perfect illustration of the supposed Chinese saying, "May you live in interesting times." It's been a busy time when it comes to geopolitical events. Would you agree, Mr. Saran?
Most certainly. I think things have been changing virtually by the day. So we are certainly living in interesting times, perhaps very turbulent times.
So let's start with the conflict in Gaza. On November 22, Israel and Hamas agreed to a ceasefire in Gaza for at least 4 days. So what are your thoughts on the future direction of the conflict and the implications for India?
I think, of course, this 4-day ceasefire and the limited exchange of hostages and Palestinian prisoners who are there in Israeli jails certainly counts as a first very positive step since this war began. So this is something we should, of course, welcome, and the world has, in fact, welcomed it. Now, whether or not this 4-day ceasefire could be extended, whether there would be further, exchanges of prisoners and hostages, this is something which remains to be seen, because there are so many things which can go wrong in the meantime. Even with respect to the current agreement, there is still the possibility of many a slip between the cup and the lip. Now, as far as India is concerned, the crunch will come when we have to consider the Israeli demand that we should declare Hamas as a terrorist organization. You are aware that just a few days ago, Israel declared the Lashkar-e-Toiba as a terrorist organization, thereby, in a sense, acceding to a long-standing demand from India that if we want to deal with international cross-border terrorism, then these groups must be identified and they should be excoriated. So in that sense, there is a certain pressure on us now to take a public stance and declare Hamas as a terrorist organization, which so far we have not done. So let us see what the government of India's future stance is going to be.
I remember. So when we spoke after the G20 summit in New Delhi, you
Yes.
gave a prescient warning that a possible conflict involving Israel could threaten the India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor. So what will be the corridor's future going forward? What will the future look like for the corridor now?
Well, some people are saying that the first part of the corridor can still go ahead. That is between India and the Middle East. The part of the corridor which involves Israel may be the one which may not fructify in the near future. So maybe a partial corridor, not a full corridor. But we should also recognize that there is a competing Belt and Road Initiative as well, which is promoting connectivity also in the region, going through, for example, Turkey. Now, obviously, as a result of the stalling of this corridor, the attractiveness of the alternative corridors will become much better. So this will mean a certain change in the regional balance. And if China is back again as the major actor in terms of building up infrastructure, then obviously its profile will also go up.
The conflict in Gaza has seen China and Russia make gains among Arab and Muslim majority nations at the expense of the US. Do you think that Beijing, in particular, has used the situation to step up its international role and gain more influence?
Oh, most certainly. I mean, there are no two ways about it. So you would have seen that a large delegation of Arab and Islamic countries recently visited Beijing and in fact requested Beijing to play an important role in trying to address the very dangerous security situation prevailing in the region. You should also take into account the fact that even a country as powerful as the United States of America has certain limitations. It is also already involved in a war in Ukraine, helping Ukraine against Russia. It is already facing tremendous amount of pressure and military threat in the Indo-Pacific region. It is not very clear what may happen, for example, with respect to Taiwan, if in the forthcoming elections, the DPP wins the elections again. Faced with already two live situations, both in Europe as well as in the Indo-Pacific, now it has to face a third, conflict zone. It is not possible even for the strongest country in the world to be exposed on three different fronts across the world. So this is also the reason why the US has taken the initiative to try and at least bring about some degree of détente in its relationship with China, recognizing that it cannot do, all these things at the same time. It cannot fight on three fronts all the time. So there has been, I think, a conscious move on the part of the United States to try and repair its relationship with China to the extent that it can now at least focus its attention on the two other conflict zones, that is both Europe as well as the Middle East. That is my reading of the situation.
So taking forward what you said, with the US's attention divided across three fronts, and with some of its influence eroding in West Asia and China's influence growing, How can India respond to this? What does this mean for India?
Well, one is to the extent that, the very close relationship, strategic partnership with the United States of America is part and parcel of our trying to put some constraint on the aggressive and expansionist behavior on the part of China. Now, of course, we have to carefully monitor what is happening in US-China relations itself, because there is no doubt that if there is a significant improvement of relations between the US and China, this will certainly shrink our own room for maneuver. So this is a relationship that we should watch carefully. I know that some people have been saying that, oh, this really, the recent summit between Xi and Biden was more of a tactical gesture, that structurally the two countries are still, very much long-term adversaries. That may be true to some extent, but, even tactical moves do matter. So if there is going to be, because the US is facing this pressure, both in the Middle East as well as in Europe, it may feel that at least there is no live conflict taking place in the Indo-Pacific. So in a sense, for US, it is a comparatively more peaceful theater than the Middle East is or Europe is. And therefore, you can afford to make some concessions there if you can't make concessions in the Middle East or in Europe. So if the US feels that it has to readjust its stance or posture towards China and to bring about a degree of, better relationship with China, naturally, it means that our diplomatic space, which is based on the assumption that for the foreseeable future, China-US relations will remain very adversarial, and the US will need India in order to countervail Chinese power in the region, that may have to be reassessed. I'm not saying that that will completely change, but, diplomacy, like economics, operates on the margins. So a little more or a little less. So it will mean that the US interest in India as a countervailing power to China may somewhat diminish.
India and the US view the upcoming Bangladesh election in January 2024 quite differently. Washington has been pressuring Sheikh Hasina to hold what it would consider free, fair, and peaceful elections in Bangladesh. Does this indicate that cooperation between New Delhi and Washington in South Asia has its limitations despite mutual interests regarding Beijing?
Well, it has always been the case that India's approach, India's perspectives on its own neighborhood has not always been the same as the US approach. I think given the fact that we have very close kind of security cooperation with the United States, close political relations with the United States, it should be possible for us to talk through whatever differences we have with respect to Bangladesh. Certainly, I think it should be no secret that we would prefer that Sheikh Hasina comes back to power. But I think we have now put in place enough assets, cross-border assets, which even if there is a non-Sheikh Hasina government which takes power, the logic of those kind of cross-border cooperative projects will continue to drive the relationship between the two countries.
Now, let's end the interview with the return of a leader who was seen as a friend of India by many in his country. Former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif is back in Pakistan, and it seems likely that he'll be back in the driving seat, at least as much as Rawalpindi allows. So, how do you view this development in particular?
We have to be conscious of the fact that there are very real limitations on any political leadership in Pakistan. Ultimately, it is what the sentiment in the armed forces is, which determines how far a political leadership is able to go in managing its relationship with India, in managing its relationship with China, with next door Afghanistan, with the United States of America. So we should be not sort of overplay the significance of a possible return to power by Nawaz Sharif. Because as soon as Nawaz Sharif starts doing things which the army is not comfortable with, the army will do what it has always done, is to try and, sideline that political leadership.
So the sense that one gets is that, as we mentioned at the start of the interview, these are interesting, meaning chaotic times. And India will have to tread carefully going forward. Thank you, Mr. Saran. Thank you for your time today. And thank you for those insightful answers. Have a good day.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
India's bullish financial markets also reflect the country's growing might. Shares of market intermediaries like BSE, CDSL, and CAMS have posted massive gains this year, led by a swift market rally. Naturally, investors want to know if there is more upside in these stocks or is it time to book profits. Harshita Singh finds the answers in this report.
The stocks of equity market intermediaries like depositories, exchanges, and registrar and transfer agents or RTAs have seen bumper gains this year. This was led by a swift market rally that led to strong trading volumes. Shares of BSE, CDSL, CAMS and K FinTech have rallied 24% to as much as 283% so far in 2023. The Nifty benchmark in comparison is up 9%. This sharp rally, analysts believe, makes the stocks ripe for profit booking in the medium term. So, they suggest booking partial profits at current levels and buying once there is weakness.
The valuation post the recent rally in these stocks have become a little expensive. Therefore, there is very limited upside from here and little left on the table for the investors. So, in the short term, the bullish trend might continue, but over the medium term, the stocks might consolidate or we might see some sort of profit booking. So, we recommend investors to partially book out profits or and re-enter later at the lower levels or witness a little time correction.
Regulatory issues amid lofty valuations of these stocks are some other risks which merit caution, experts say.
We have a short-term bear market of 2-3 quarters and the share price may also correct. There are regulatory changes, consistent pressure on the yields. Some AMCs have lower bargaining power. There is a heavy dependence on the mutual fund revenues for RTAs. So the EBITDA margins may also remain range bound for the short term. If there are any changes in the TER expense ratios by SEBI.
Gupta still likes the tech-oriented nature of these businesses, which requires less capital and allows cashback for investors. RTAs like CAMS and K FinTech, meanwhile, earn revenues through fee charged on mutual funds AUMs, while Asia's oldest stock exchange, BSE, and the country's largest depository, CDSL, earn from charges levied on all trades. The long-term prospects are strong for these companies given the low capital market penetration and a booming economy, experts note.
The markets are in uptrend, so these intermediate stocks which are linked to the capital market, they tend to benefit as the higher volume growth tends to directly flow to the earnings growth. The overall buoyancy in the capital market for the next 5 to 10 years, the markets are expected to do really well with the economy booming.
The rising investor participation in India is reflected in the threefold increase in demat accounts after the COVID pandemic. Active clients on the NSE too have risen from 11 million in FY20 to 33.4 million as of September end this year. Thus, the stocks might consolidate in the medium term, but analysts suggest using the dips to buy them from a long-term perspective. Today, on 24 November, the last street will take cues from global equities.
He's making plans for an early retirement. Business Standard.
Softer than expected inflation data in the United States has also lifted market spirits. But a recent news from the US has triggered a row here. US authorities have claimed to have foiled a bid to kill Gurpatwant Singh Pannun. India considers him a terrorist. Nandini Singh has more on it.
A UK media report has claimed that the United States foiled an assassination bid on one of the most recognizable faces of the Khalistani separatist movement, Gurpatwant Singh Pannun, in the US. The report claimed that there was a plot to kill Pannun, and the US had to issue a diplomatic warning to India over the matter. Pannun is an American citizen born in Kankot village on the outskirts of Amritsar. He is a lawyer by qualification, but is known for his role in the Khalistani separatist movement. Pannun is also the founder of Sikhs for Justice, or SFJ. This US-based Khalistani separatist group has been behind the referendum called Referendum 2020 in several countries in support of a separate homeland for Sikhs in Punjab. Sikhs for Justice, or SFJ, was founded in 2007, and Pannun officially holds the post of legal advisor and spokesperson for the organization. The organization was founded with the express intent of achieving self-determination for the Sikh group in their historic homeland in the region of Indian-held Punjab and establishing a sovereign state popularly known as Khalistan. In 2019, India banned the Sikhs for Justice, and in 2020, Pannun was declared a terrorist. Earlier this year, following the killing of Khalistani separatist Hardeep Singh Nijjar in Canada, SFJ had issued kill posters with the names and details of Indian diplomats. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau later alleged that there were credible allegations that Indian agents were behind the killing of Nijjar. Earlier this month, Pannun released another video calling on Sikhs to not fly on Air India from November 19, suggesting that they might get killed. The warning triggered heightened security at Delhi, Amritsar, and Ahmedabad airports. Following this, the National Investigation Agency booked him under relevant sections of the Indian Penal Code. He was also booked under provisions of the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act that deal with planning a terrorist act and being a member of a terrorist organization.
I will achieve, I will fly high. SBI. I'm backed by the nation's trusted bank, SBI, the banker to every Indian.
Pannun had also released a video threatening to disrupt the Cricket World Cup final between India and Australia. Well, that's all for today. For more news and analysis, please log into our website business-standard.com. Thank you for watching.
If you liked this video, share it and subscribe to Business Standard. For more news, views and insights, log on to www.business-standard.com. Do also follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Telegram and LinkedIn.